Welcome to your Daily Detroit for Monday, February 3rd, 2020. I'm Jer Stays. Today, a mover and shaker is helping fund a campaign for equal rights for LGBTQ Michiganders. Speaking of which, a new housing development will be built to support youth in that community. Beaumont Hospital is expanding in Grosse Pointe. The Detroit People Mover is changing directions. And then, a conversation with developer David Alade, the co-founder of Century Partners. I caught up with him at the Detroit Policy Conference, and we chatted about the Fitzgerald Neighborhood in the city of Detroit. That's where his company is doing a variety of projects, and it's one of the neighborhoods the city is focusing on right now. So, let's just get started. Michigan is consistently considered one of the worst states in the nation when it comes to LGBTQ rights. Why? Well, here it's completely legal to fire someone or deny them housing based on their sexual orientation. Many attempts have failed over the years to amend the Elliott-Larsen Act, usually pushed by a coalition of the business, union, and other communities, but they have gotten no traction with Republicans in firm control of the state legislature. Activists say it's the right thing to do, and most in the corporate community agree, as it is a factor that dissuades top talent from coming or staying in Michigan, whether they are LGBTQ themselves or supportive. The latest is that Rock Holdings, yes, that umbrella company owned by Dan Gilbert, has put $100,000 into a ballot initiative called Fair and Equal Michigan and endorsed expanding the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act to include sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Action around this issue is heating up, with petitions reportedly beginning circulation over the weekend for the ballot measure. My 2 cents? The vast majority of people here want these protections in place. In a recent poll, it's something like 77% support. It's a shame that our legislature is so unresponsive that it has to come to this. On Claremont, west of Woodward, within dog walking distance of the North End studio here, plans have been announced for 43 units of supportive housing for LGBTQ young adults between 18 and 25 years old. It'll be a collaboration between the Highland Park-based Ruth Ellis Center and Full Circle Communities out of Chicago. The Detroit News says that the building will rise in the next 18 months, with most of the units covered by vouchers that will cover most of the expenses of the residents, and there will be a live-in peer support specialist. The total project cost is expected to be about $15 million. I'll put a link to the full story in the show notes. Now over to Grosse Pointe, where a $19 million renovation is underway to the surgical center at Beaumont Hospital. James and Patricia Anderson have made a $5 million gift for a new 900-square-foot hybrid surgical suite at the hospital at Cadju and Jefferson, as well as funding for training. What is a hybrid surgical suite, you might ask? Well, I wondered myself, so I did. Basically, it's a very tech-first operating room with all of the usual surgical tools and lights, but also live imaging and the ability to compare before and after images in real time while doctors are working. It also includes a fancy piece of equipment called a C-arm. It allows for both open and minimally invasive procedures. And there will also be endowment funding for training on the equipment and on new technology going forward, thanks to this support from James and Patricia Anderson. Anderson is the CEO of Urban Science, an auto retail consulting firm. They've also made other contributions in the region, including $25 million to Wayne State University for the College of Engineering's commercialization unit. The Detroit People Mover is changing directions for the first time in more than a decade. It'll now go counterclockwise, which, if you think about it, it might kind of make sense now that Joe Louis Arena is gone. Before, it was serving a lot of Red Wings fans. Now, you can go from Cobo Hall to the Rensen to Greektown to Comerica Park a bit quicker. The change will be phased in on weekends this month, and then the switch will be fully made in March. The move reduces wear and tear on the system, according to the Detroit Transit Corporation that runs the nearly 3-mile-long loop. Can I just say, the Detroit Transit Corporation sounds like it does way more than just the People Mover, and it's kind of like out of the movie RoboCop. I wanted to quickly thank our members who make this show possible. We have new ones at patreon.com/dailydetroit. Thank you to Colin, who joined us, and to Dennis, who upped his monthly support over the weekend. You are both awesome. You might ask, where can you join those good folks and become a member yourself? Well, patreon.com/Daily Detroit. And thank you. Now to our feature conversation. Joining me at the Motor City Soundboard at the Detroit Policy Conference across the table of our mobile studio is David Alade from Century Partners. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you.
So here's what I want to talk about today, the Fitzgerald Neighborhood. I used to stay over in University District for a long time. I'm familiar with Fitzgerald. I think it's got a lot of opportunity and a lot of potential. But let's set the table for people who are not familiar with Fitzgerald, where it is, and kind of like what's going on there, because I know that you are spending a lot of time and treasure in that corner of Detroit.
Absolutely. So Fitzgerald, like you said, is not too far away from your old stomping grounds, University District. The boundaries of our development project are Livernois on the east side, McNichols on the north side, Green Lawn on the west side, so bordering Marygrove, and Puritan on the south side. So it's sort of a 9-by-3 block area and neighborhood with a ton of history, a ton of really great neighbors who've been there for a long time, 30, 40, 50 years. They're our real anchors, and they can tell the history and story of the neighborhood. And it's also a place that suffered significant disinvestment. Our development company will control over 300 parcels in this neighborhood, and that's because those parcels were owned by the Detroit Land Bank. So that gives you a sense of the amount of disinvestment, that about a quarter of the parcels in this entire neighborhood at some point came under control of the government due to foreclosure. So we're really excited about the project. Ordinarily, a neighborhood that suffers from some of the symptoms this one doesn't get the type of attention, and we were excited because we knew we would be bringing all of our real estate experience to bear that we've executed in neighborhoods across Detroit, the city of Detroit. And the mayor made it a priority, so they were directing a lot of philanthropic as well as other government resources to the area. From an infrastructure perspective, there's a park that's just been completed in the middle. There's a Greenway that connects the east and west, Marygrove to University of Detroit Mercy, that traverses the neighborhood and breaks up the blocks a little bit. There's a commercial corridor investment that Invest Detroit's leading. It's really robust.
There's also some stuff going on, too, that we mentioned quickly on the podcast, but there's some streetscape improvements happening. Some stuff where if you look at the renderings, it's straight out of what you think of in like a bigger city with like the bike lanes, the separated bike lanes, and the bus stops, and the walkability.
Right.
And there have been some retail folks trying to do things on McNichols, or as I always call it, 6 Mile, along there. But like this streetscape really looks like it's something that'll help kick it off. So that said, I know that you're not doing the streetscape, but what are the projects that you're working on inside of that neighborhood?
Our job as the developer is really to focus on stewarding over 100 vacant lots and about 80 vacant houses for rehab. And so we're tasked with getting these houses online over the next 5-6 years, as well as figuring out active interventions for the vacant lots. So we've done some, I think, really, really cool things. We're piloting what we're calling a farmstead concept, where we sell a house and adjacent lots to a farmer, an urban grower, an experienced urban grower. We closed on that first bundle of parcels just a few weeks ago. The guy's name's Kello Karamoko. He'll be farming in the neighborhood, increasing kind of awareness about food access, food transparency, how food is made, how it's created, how it's prepared, really adding that element as a resource to the neighborhood. We've worked to bring in other community partners. Building Detroit, we sold them a house at cost. We have the house for them at cost, and now it's a institution for early childhood education for the neighborhood, resource. I personally tutor there every Tuesday, so we're really excited about that. We've planted 20 meadows on vacant lots, so really making sure that the meadows they will be beautiful flowering meadows. They'll be an asset, to the neighborhood.
Well, and that kind of makes sense too, because if I remember correctly, some of those blocks are really long.
They're really long blocks.
Long blocks, like some of the longest blocks I've ever seen.
They're very long, yeah. And that's part of the reason why the city kind of sponsored the development of a greenway that cuts through from Livernois all the way to Marygrove. It breaks up the box a bit and allows for better traffic from both a pedestrian, cycling, and car perspective.
So from a developer's point of view, why do greenways and things like that matter? Because I think there's sometimes pushback from folks like, why do we need to do streetscapes? Why do we need to do greenways? Why do we need to do these extra things? From a development and building up the neighborhood perspective, why do they matter?
They matter because they make the neighborhood more attractive. I mean, it signals that people care that people are willing to invest. It signals that this is a safer place. Has a broader attention from the broader Detroit community. It's a place that they're putting in resources. And so for us, we want to make sure as many Detroiters as possible really are able to get an economic stake in their city's comeback. And so if you're buying houses in a place, if you're a first-time home buyer, you're buying a home in a place that's receiving a ton of investment from a civic infrastructure, commercial infrastructure, or housing infrastructure perspective, you have a lot of confidence that that house that you bought this year will continue to appreciate, and you'll be further along in that wealth building journey. So it's incredibly important.
So for a minute, especially because we have so many listeners I know that are either rehabbing houses, they want to do things in the city, they care about the city. What are some of the things that you've learned in your journey of doing this project that you could share with others to help them? Because I tell you, at least once a week, twice a week, I get emails from folks. I'm looking to do a project in Detroit. I want to do something in Detroit, whether it's big scale, small scale. What are some of the things that you've learned that you could help share with others?
I think the hardest part is to start.
Okay.
I think anytime you're doing, so the hardest part is to go from 0 to 1. I think anytime you're doing development, that means you're changing the status quo, and there's always someone who has a vested interest in preserving the status quo. So understanding that change is difficult. That development takes patience and time, whether it's on a small scale or a large scale. There are going to be issues, probably finding contractors. There are going to be issues managing budgets. But understand that from the beginning, I think it's an important perspective to kind of build in from the start. And that ultimately, I think, if you pick the right neighborhood, if you pick a neighborhood where you feel comfortable living and playing, and a neighborhood where you know your neighbors and you're investing in the community, you're more likely going to make a pretty good investment if you have that longer term perspective.
Well, and I think that's so key. I think one of the things for me being a long-term Detroit resident is knowing the neighbors. One of the reasons I like living in the city is that it's a place where I know my neighbors. We have a text message service to look out for each other's dogs.
Definitely.
These are the kind of things that are different than I think other places in the region. There's only a few other places in the region I can think of that have that kind of community fabric. So looking forward, as we kind of land this here, looking forward, what can we expect to see out of Century Partners and what's coming for folks? Because I think it's something that every time I go through that neighborhood, I see something else happening. Kind of what's higher level? What are we going to see? And do you have any idea kind of when?
Yeah, sure. So I think over the years, you'll see more houses come online, and we've already rehabbed about 10 houses. Most of them have been sold to first-time home buyers and Detroit-based folks. You'll see more commercial investment on McNichols on 6 Mile. We'll see some pizza shops, some restaurants start to open come this probably late spring.
Okay.
Fall of this year. We're going to keep rolling out these farmsteading contests where we're making sure that Detroiters who are experienced growers are not only just working land, but they have equity in their home, they have equity in their lots, and they're part of the wealth building that Detroit's currently experiencing. You'll see the completion of the Greenway that really connects, we talked about the east and west boundaries of the neighborhood. IFF with Starfish, they're really investing in an early childhood center and a new high school on the campus of Marygrove.
We actually had the head of Marygrove on the show a couple months ago to talk about that because it is a really, really interesting project. So if people want to get involved, let's say they want to get one of these places or they want to do something in the neighborhood, what can they do?
They can reach out to me, reach out to my team. They can reach us at info@centurypartners.org. That's probably the most efficient way. I'll get the email. I can, depending on what the inquiry is, I can make sure the right person on my team responds to you as quickly as possible.
Wonderful. Well, David Alade, thank you so much for your time at Daily Detroit.
Thank you for having me, Jeremiah. I appreciate it.
All right, that'll do it for today. Of course, thanks behind the scenes to Cheyenne Nocerini, Randy Walker, who's working on bringing us some video to your headlines on our social media Twitterverses. Kind of excited about that. Sven Gustafson, of course, and everyone else who makes this show possible. I'm Jer Stays. I'm going to get out of here before it gets too cold for a dog walk. Take care of each other, and I'll see you around Detroit.